We have a couple of people here. So John Bravo can't join the podcast because last night somebody slashed his tires, and he was supposed to be gotten the car out of the garage by the time the podcast started, but he couldn't. He sends his apologies. He believes that Boston was one of the main reasons he started on YouTube, and that I'll let him speak about it maybe in a future podcast as this podcast will continue. Hey Dave, welcome. Oh, Blue.
Hey, how you doing, man?
We still have a couple more people coming, yeah.
So who all is coming to this party?
I think it's just Tony Huge and then Pete Rubish.
Oh, okay.
Basically, I try, and Dom Super Sliced will be here. Super Sliced. I keep calling him Super Spliced by mistake. I don't know why.
He's never been spliced, but he has been sliced.
That's true.
That's how you'll remember that forever and ever. Has he been spliced? No, but he's been sliced. Now, I'll see that, Leo. You'll never forget that.
Make sure you sound not too loud.
Well, I guess we could sort
How's
of
my volume? I'm like,
yeah, you're good. Very good.
all right, great.
Tony, how you doing?
Good, guys. Look at you. You're all wearing warm clothing. Looks like you're all in cold environments there.
I am actually in my house. That's true. I think we have probably just Dom joining. Otherwise, Cardone couldn't come. He wanted to. Dom Cardone wanted to come, but couldn't. So I think we can probably get started and let the next person come in. Before anything else, because I know not everybody is going to watch the podcast all the way through, I want to establish some facts. First, I want you guys to know that there will be a GoFundMe link in the comments section. This is the same GoFundMe that was made for the funeral and the wake, but you have to understand that if you just exceed the amount of donations, they go to Ariella and to help with Jackson. Ariella does not have any source of income, to my knowledge, other than Boston. So first of all, I highly encourage you to donate to that GoFundMe. Even though Boston did not want a GoFundMe in his name, it really helps Ariella out personally. Boston did not expect to die this young, and we'll get into why later. So the GoFundMe is in the comment section. The second thing I wanted to let you guys know is I never had anything really to do with this Bostin Loyd forum. It was Boston's forum. I didn't really manage it much myself. I knew some people on the forum, and I like the forum because it provided a lot of value to people. It genuinely saves people a lot of money and stuff like that. But I used to recommend it every week because it was Boston's main source of income. And so the reason why I'm right now trying to help some of the truest fans, and I want to give a call out, the truest fans of Boston, you should probably make a comment. Maybe I'll make a post on my Instagram asking about the forum. And the truest fans, we need a couple of you guys to manage the forum, and then we need maybe one of the anabolic pharmacists or something to also help. So the reason for that would be just to continue some income for Jackson and Ariella. In fact, I'm uncomfortable doing this a little bit because it's quasi-legal, but the reason to do it is only because of Ariella and Jackson, okay? So just to be clear.
The side enhancement oil, do you know if she's going to keep that up, that in the pre-workout?
That's a good point, Beau. I didn't think about that and I haven't asked her yet.
Well, with the oil, that would be good to keep going.
That's a great point. Okay, so actually I'll take a note.
Painless Pumps is gone now, so I mean, he's like really the true go-to person.
So the oil and the pre-workout? He has a pre-workout also?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll mention that to her for sure. Ariella, I talk to every day, by the way, guys. She's doing very, very poorly. She's, deeply in love with Boston. She was a true wife, not one of these, women that just use you for your career or something like that. She loved Boston to death. He was her best friend, and she can't even imagine her life without him. So I've been talking to her every day about it. Anyway, I have a couple of more housekeeping things, just one more. I wanted to stop making videos about bodybuilding. To be honest with you guys, I made a lot of videos about bodybuilding because it's one of the areas where PEDs are used the most. And it's one of the areas where I learned about PEDs from. I'm a powerlifter, arm wrestler guy. I'm not even a bodybuilding guy. And as Milos pointed out, that piece of shit so many times, I'm not a bodybuilder. So because of Milos actually and other people like him, these creeps, I thought, before a couple of months ago, I wanted to stop making content, but Boston wanted to keep doing the podcast with me. The only reason I kept making any bodybuilding content was because of Boston, because I loved talking to him and he was my true friend, even though I never met him. And so I didn't know this. I was thinking of not making any more content, but then I thought I should make more content for to advertise the forum as my channel grows to continue for Ariella. But then a lot of subscribers, fans of this podcast, messaged me over the last few days telling me that they want the podcast to keep going, even though Boston's not there. They want the podcast to keep going in his spirit, in the kind of honesty that he had, the kind of humility that he had, which I don't embody. I would only aspire to be 5% of that, or 10% of his extreme honesty and stuff like that. But the point is, I just want you guys to know, for Boston's sake, for Ariella's sake, for Boston's legacy, and for the subscribers of the channel who genuinely like the podcast, I will keep it going with the podcast regulars that are willing to come regularly, which will include for sure Bleu and Armon, and we'll see who else is willing as well. So that's all I have to say as an introduction, guys. I thought maybe each of us could talk about our experiences with Boston. Maybe we could start with, does someone want to start in particular? And then later we could talk about his cause of death. I have, by the way, I'd like to make clear from the beginning, Dave Palumbo, wrong as always. And everything that he said about Boston was incorrect and disrespectful to a dead person. And I don't like it. I'm going to fix it all in this podcast. But whenever it comes up. But
wait, what did you say? In which part did you say of what Dave said?
First of all, he said there's an he said it was an aortic dissection. They are not sure yet. He rushed to deliver. Yes, man, I'm in contact with the mother, with the father. No, first of all, Ariella and the father John are the first people who got the autopsy, not the mother Mary. Mary, for some reason, rushed to Dave before they even know if it's a thoracic or aortic rupture. So they don't even know. Second of all, Dave said that this has nothing to do with his previous background or whatever. No, it has a lot to do with it. Dave doesn't know what happened to Boston in his recent life. Also, the last two videos Dave made about Boston were disrespectful as hell. He said Boston would never listen to him and he just didn't pay attention, and that's what happens when you don't pay attention. No, Boston changed his life dramatically over the last year. As much as he could. He really tried all the time. And Dave, that piece of shit, turned his back on him a year and a half ago. And I know that, not just because Boston told me that, not just because Dave canceled Boston's kidney stuff order 2 months before his death. 2 months before his death, he canceled the order when it came from Bostin Loyd. Not only that, I talked to Dave on the phone by myself a year and a half ago. I told Dave, Boston has kidney failure, we have to save him. Dave said, he cannot be saved, he's gonna die. I said, no, we still have to try. And then he said, no, there's no point, he's gonna die. So this piece of shit turned his back on someone he calls his own son, and refused his order of kidney stuff, and yet made 3 videos about him before I even made 1 video. That piece of shit creep snake. I'm sick and tired of you, Dave Palumbo, you piece of shit. Anyway, sorry. I tried to take a Valium so I don't get...
Your blood pressure, Leo, your blood pressure.
I have good blood pressure.
Yeah, I took a few Xanax. This is
no, Dave is a piece of shit and he has to be called out for it. Don't fucking talk about dead people, that you refuse their orders of kidney stuff, that you let them to die a year and a half ago. He never called them once a month to say, hey bro, try to lose weight, try to lose some muscle, come on, you can do it. Never called, not once, after years of knowing him. I called him every 2 or 3 days to check on him. He would not listen to me, but I kept trying, just in case 5 to 10% gets better, and it did. I failed him personally when I was so obsessed. I was a selfish piece of shit. At the end of last year and the beginning of this year, I had some family problems. And because I had these family problems, I was not making videos and I was not communicating with you guys, and I had these kind of things. And I thought I had a problem. I didn't know Boston had a bigger problem than I had. Boston first had a bacterial infection. This is while we were talking. I didn't have my family problem. It wasn't so bad. I tried to help him as much as I could with bacterial infection, but he didn't treat it very well. This contributed to his eventual death, I'm sure. Second, after the bacterial infection, I didn't know this, but when I was sitting feeling sorry for myself, Boston had an almost deathly encounter with COVID. And this long, deathly encounter with COVID that he didn't even tell me about because he's not selfish, he just checked on me. He was messaging me, asking me how I'm doing. I wasn't there for him at the time, so I couldn't give him any advice during that time at all. And maybe he wouldn't have listened to it anyway, but maybe I could have helped a little, but I didn't. Then when I came back, I felt better and things got better with my family. I talked to Boston and he told me, hey, I almost died from COVID, man. I thought I was going to die any day. So I blame myself, and that's one of the reasons I've been quite depressed over the last couple of weeks. But if I blame myself, then Palumbo, what the fuck are you as a human being? Anyway, so sorry about that. I just had to make that clear because I am a defender of Boston.
Escalate a little bit.
No. It's no escalation shit like that. No. I defend my friends. I don't play those games. Somebody talks about the dead and says he didn't care about his health. No, he cared about his health. And if he talks about the dad, says he died in one manner immediately because he just got the information. No, it's not even decided. You piece of... Anyway, I won't go further. Who wants to start with their experiences with Boston?
You can't get an autopsy report back in less than 2
He didn't
weeks.
get... The report is not done, bro. He fucking piece of... It's not done. I asked Ariella last night. She said she's personally annoyed with Dave for going and saying it's an aortic dissection. It could have been thoracic. And not only that, by the way, guys... Dave doesn't know what happened. What happened was an abdominal aneurysm. His pain was in his abdomen. They were in the... I'm not going to go into details because Ariella will come on the podcast and tell it herself. But what happened involves him feeling extreme pain in his abdomen. If you guys don't know this, acromegalics and giants and basketball players also often die of abdominal aneurysms. Something to do with growth hormone IGF causes that often. Complicating factor, if you've had bacterial infection for a long time, serious one, it damages your cells across your body. If you've had CKD, chronic kidney disease, for a year and not been cleaning your blood, the uremic toxins damage all your little cells in your body. And then if you get COVID, as everybody knows, bacterial and viral infections can directly cause heart failure. Forget about your arterial walls. So it was damage on his system over time. And then that night he went to go work out his serious workout, the workout he takes the painkiller for. So that workout was a hard workout.
A light workout.
And may have pushed his cardiovascular system too far. Now, those are more details that could have been useful if somebody actually wanted to communicate stuff. Anyway, who wants to start to talk about the good things of Boston, not the negative stuff about people talking about him?
I'll start. I guess I'm at Boston in, 2013. He contacted me. Everybody, of course, probably knew Boston from his viral video of his transformation. And he contacted me 2013. We were talking about prep, wanted to work with me. We spoke back and forth. I said, Boston, you're so extreme. I was like, we can't do all that. I can't prep you if you're going to do all that. He was just laughing, It's no secret, okay? People that say, oh, Boston did this. He never denied. He was very open with what he did, what he used. He didn't push it on other people. If you see his other clients' programs, they're very moderate. That everybody has their decision in life. That's what made him happy. Not everybody agreed with him, but it doesn't matter. So we stayed friends since then, spoke on and off. These last couple years, 2-3 years, got even closer, started speaking almost, at least every week, then more and more and more. Then about a year ago when I had that stint of that opiate BS that I went through, we started talking a lot more. And then, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, ask Leo, let me see if I can come on the show once or something like that. He said, okay. And then I think that's when we started. Before that, we were speaking almost daily, Boston would have a question. You know how he was. He'd ask the same person the same question.
Yeah, he'd ask everyone the same damn question.
And he wouldn't. He wanted to get the answer he wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So basically for the past year, we would speak every day. Just about everything, just BS. And his sleep schedule is always crazy. I'm like, Boston, it's 4 a.m. I'm asleep. He goes, oh, I'm just, So the guy. People that, I get it. He has a lot of trolls and haters because people don't know him. All they know is Boston extreme, this, but he was always there for people. He'd always text people back, since his passing, how many people text me, they would be like, no matter what, I wasn't even paying Boston for a program or this and that. He always answered my texts back. And I'm surprised he never said, you're annoying, leave me alone. And he was just a good person and just wanted to help people and just nice and, liked to troll people, but it was always playful. And no one really can say anything really bad about him that actually knows him. I mean, there can be strangers that are like, oh, he's, he represented this and kids listen to him and this. And I think,
Well, actually, Armon, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because that's actually. Oh, I don't know, someone disappeared, but that's actually the main thing that bothered me with some of the reviews from other channels. They didn't realize that Boston changed his recommendations. In the last 2 years, Boston does not recommend extreme doses to anybody. And he doesn't on the channel, if people want to know, just watch my podcast with Boston that lasted a year. It was a podcast about how he damaged his body with extreme doses. That's what it was about. And he talked to me privately. He said, I want to do this. I want to expose this. When he first got kidney failure, we talked about it privately. I said, are you going to go public or not? He said, I want to go public. I want to protect people. And so that was the whole purpose of it, yeah. So sorry to interrupt you, Armon, but I just wanted people to know that he changed his recommendations and he really wanted people to avoid his mistakes. He was really serious about that.
Yeah, he did. And, you know,
because John Romano said something about like his influence overall was bad. I don't think so. There was a lot of influence from this podcast in the last year that was really good. And I don't think you can say overall his influence is bad. Sorry, Armon, again.
No, not that. I think people that didn't know him or maybe watch the show, they would just hear his name and just like, oh, you know, this or that. They didn't know him or even know what he spoke about now. Like he you know, agreed. Yeah, I did a lot of, you know, stuff I would never recommend anybody to do. And he realized that you don't have to take that much stuff for it to work. He realized it makes you feel worse. But, you know, it's just, I think you know, everybody that was close to him, I'm on my phone, so I can't see everybody who's on here right now. I know Bleu is on here, but I just know he, you know, this was going to be a hard one today. And it's like, I just kind of have lost the words. I mean, it's just, it doesn't feel real. It just doesn't feel real.
When Armon first heard of the news, he was texting me and we were voice noting each other. I think he called, I don't know if he called, but most of us were crying. Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to wait to make this video is because I didn't want that to happen on the video as much. I mean, I don't mind if it happens. I wanted to be able to speak, and Armon could not speak originally, just for people to know. Dom, I know you have to go a bit earlier, brother. Do you want to...
Yeah, sure. So like, I'll tell you my experience with Boston, and I wish everyone really got to know him for the person that he really was, kind of like how we are, because everyone just sees him, you know, for his brutal honesty. But my first experience I ever had with him, like I've known him probably for like 10 or 12 years, but I remember in like 2015, after I took second at the USA's, and he writes a message. He goes, you're lucky that you get in such good shape, because that's the highest you're ever placing with that god awful structure. Is a typical Boston comment. And, you know, I'm not like these other people that take offense to it. I mean, he's got a good point with some of the things that he said. I mean, he's not lying about it. So I just laughed it off. And then over the years, I think that I started helping like one of his friends, and was able to get one of his close friends in really good shape. And then we became like really, really good friends. And, you know, for the people that don't know him, I've seen him go ahead and even rip apart even like clients that I work with, saying, you know, your structure sucks, you have pencil legs, whatever it may be. But those same people I was at a show with, and Boston's like, hey, like, are you going to be in town? Do you want to come by? And I would tell him, you know, I'm with these two other clients that he just got done ripping apart. He's like, tell them to come by. They could spend the weekend here. You know, my wife will cook for them. And, you know, and that's the thing that people need to realize. Like, he was brutally honest, which I love that about him. That's what made him so unique. And that's like, he would say the things that people were thinking in their head, but wouldn't say. And, you know, but like, he did not have a mean, malicious bone in his body. You know, like whatever he would say about anyone, he would never wish harm amongst anyone, no matter how big of a piece of shit that they are or not. I know, like I said, like he would give the shirt off of his back for anyone. And that's the truth, you know. I'm going to miss him so much. I mean, the unfortunate thing is there's no one really you're never going to find anyone that's like him. You know, I'm going to miss his Spill Viz videos. You know, those are priceless. And just everything that he did, he could really like brighten up the room. Like once you really got to know him, you know, like words can't really describe the type of person that he is unless you've truly like got to know him on that level, which I think, you know, everyone here that's on this Zoom call right now can kind of vouch for that. You know, and he'll definitely never be forgotten. And I think like the people that really did know him like we did, like need to try to go ahead and show people actually the type of person that he was, not what the way that people think that he was. Cause I know like when this first happened initially, like I was getting into like some heated battles with people like online, and then like where it was like consuming 2 days straight of just like fighting with assholes all day long. And then I realized, you know, like you're never going to get through to these people, and these people just, they don't have the slightest clue of the type of person that he actually was. You know, and that's really like my whole experience with him. I became very, very close with him over the last 5 years. You know, I found out initially, just like Leo did, when he went into renal failure. And, you know, like I tried talking to him too many times. I told him, you know, like, you can't be doing crazy hypertrophy training, eating tons of protein. You know, but the thing was, is that Bostin loved this lifestyle and everything about it. Like that was his drug. Like there's some people that are alcoholics, people that are addicted to opiates. Well, those drugs like that, that's what bodybuilding and stuff, that's what that was like for Bostin. That was his drug. And I'll tell you what, if Bostin wasn't living that lifestyle, I don't care what anyone says, he wouldn't be happy. So, you know, the thing that one positive way, I guess you could look at this is that, you know, he still did like pass, like doing still what he did love. And I feel like over the past couple of years, one thing positive to take out of this is that his image to other people started to change, where he did start saying, listen, I'm not recommending these doses. He's like, I've done these things to myself so I could educate others on what to do and what not to do. And I'll tell you the truth, like as a coach, you could read tons of clinical studies on different things. And most of the time clinical studies are done in doses that are such small amounts that are really not applicable to what bodybuilders are really doing. So a lot of times, like when I would want to get feedback on different things, there wasn't a better reference to talk to than Bostin. Like, you know, he really was truly like a special and genuine friend and individual.
Very much so. Dave, do you want to?
I want to touch upon something that's been touched upon a little bit already, but in a slightly different way. I think Bostin's legacy, truly, his true legacy, is about 180 degrees from what everyone thinks it was.
Yeah.
Everyone's got this notion of him as this reckless guy who is making other people be reckless too. And that's not the case at all. Let's put it this way. You tell a child not to do something, or they can't have that, or don't do that because it's dangerous or it might hurt you. The kid's they're not going to listen. You can't tell that child or that person not to do something. Not even just a child, just a person. You have to lead by example. You have to show them, or they have to experience it before they'll believe it. And what Bostin did for this community, for our industry, is to show us. Guess what? Not only does it not produce, you know, the kind of results that you think it will, and he showed us that. He didn't just tell us, look, you know, wasn't doing like drugs are bad. Okay, you can do that all day long, and they're not going to listen. But he actually showed us him doing it and the results of it in real time. And the results were not what people thought they were going to be. And the young people needed to see that. And then with the health implications that came afterwards, that showed the other side. So he wasn't just preaching or telling, he was showing. And that to me is his legacy. No one else has done that. I don't think anyone else ever will.
It's such a good point, Dave. Nobody's actually done that before. Even like Rich wasn't that open with what he was doing. And so Bostin was the most open. And if you think about it also, Dave, right before Bostin became really popular online, that was the days that GH15 on Get Big was really popular.
That's about when I met him, by the way.
And so a lot of people were thinking then genuinely that like 300 milligrams of tren a day will mutate you and you will become, you know, William Bonac one day or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're right, because like even for me, because we saw Boston use higher doses and not do better in some shows. Remember that one show he used really high doses? I can't
And
remember.
we watched it. He
We
wasn't
watched
just
it and we
standing
learned
there.
like, oh, okay, that doesn't
Boston
work.
Loyd. And, you know, without being too dramatic, you can actually go on a limb and say that he sacrificed his life for us,
Yeah,
you know, in the industry,
that's
for the generation coming up.
that's
What
that's
better
so beautiful.
learning tool than what this man gave us?
That's so beautiful. That's so true. Is it someone else want to speak or?
Yeah, I'll go. Boston was really one of a kind, like everyone said. I mean, I've never met anyone who just cannot lie. He wouldn't even exaggerate. I mean, he would come on this podcast and admit to things that we would probably consider humiliating and we would not talk about openly. But he didn't give a shit, man. That's who he was. If he did it, he would tell you about it. You know, he was totally open. And his integrity, I mean, I know for a fact he's turned down a lot of deals from people. YouTubers offer money for a few hours work, good money for 3-4 hours work to collab with them. And if he didn't agree on it, or particularly, you know, not dislike, like if he didn't feel comfortable with them, he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that? Somebody contacts me, you know, with a couple of grand for an hour at work, I'm going to do it. And, you know, even with other things like pre-workouts, peptide companies, a lot of people wanted to use his name. And if the quality wasn't good, if he didn't think the products were legit, he put up his name on it. He didn't want to be associated with anything that wasn't 100% legit.
So true.
And I met Boston in 2014. He wrote me out of the blue. And he said something similar like he did to Dom. He said, you know, I really respect you in a way more than somebody like a Dexter Jackson. He said, because you don't have good genetics. But
It's a backhanded compliment each time, but he doesn't mean it.
So he starts out so nicely. He's like, genetics. But he said, but I mean, obviously you're doing something right. He said, you know, you built all this muscle. He said, you know, you know what you're doing and you just keep doing it. It's obvious you love it. So he asked me my doses. And when I told him, the numbers were so high that he knew I wasn't lying. And he was like, wow. He said, nobody tells me the truth. He said, I can count on a few fingers the amount of people that told me the truth. And I think right then we just clicked. Like he kind of respected me for telling him the truth. And we just started going back and forth, man. In the beginning, really, it was mainly bodybuilding. I mean, like everyone else said, I'm on Boston's same sleep schedule. You know, I don't go 6 times. And, you know, all through the night, 4:30, 5:30. So just some random drug question pop up, you know, and he wants to get into it at like 5:30 a.m.
After his workouts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I missed that, man. I can't tell you over the past 2 weeks how many times I've seen like an IG post that was maybe cringe or something I knew Boston would laugh his ass off. And I can't even tell you how many times I'd be like, oh man, I'd love to send forward that to Boston, or he already would have sent it to me. Like we just laughed all night, man. During the day, I would only text him with something important I didn't want to forget because I knew, you know, daytime was like Ariella and Jackson. So we really like mainly would be on the phone all night. And so like I said, in the beginning, it was mainly bodybuilding, but after a while, you know, we started talking about family. We were both really into our dogs. And he always checked up on me during dialysis and the transplant. And then after that, like the past year and a half when his problems developed, I think we really formed a bond because, you know, doctors can only tell you so much, but if you know someone who's been through it firsthand and they've done what you've done, you know, you can relate. And but that was kind of difficult for me because I couldn't lie to Boston. You know, I felt like he deserved the same respect that he, you know, I couldn't lie to him about what I've done and what I do. But I was also very careful. I didn't want to glorify certain things, you know, like, okay, yeah, you're on dialysis, take this, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
You didn't want to give him that like he was trying to find ways out of it, sort of like ways to be on dialysis and still lift, and that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite because he knew, he knows everything about me. So I would tell him, but like I got to the point where like literally every text started with, well, me personally, you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't want to say you. I never told Boston you should do this, you should do that. But I couldn't lie to him. If he asked me, what did you do? I told him, But I was very mindful not to. I tried to persuade him not to, but just very lightly. I didn't want to preach to him. I don't like when people do that to me. So that was kind of like a tightrope for me. I was always concerned about, being truthful, but not giving him hope that, okay, I'm going to jump into that too. And I don't know, man. I really miss the guy. I don't get attached to people like that. I mean, I have friends that I've known for 10 years and I like them. When I see them, I love to hang out with them. I enjoy their company, but I'm not the type that feels the need to be in touch with you every day. But I was like that with Boston, man, and he was a good guy. Very good guy. One of a kind.
One of a kind.
I think, Dom, you told me that, is Brent available now?
So I text him.
Okay, I just texted him.
He said he isn't, and he said he could in an hour maybe because he's a school teacher.
Sure. And
he was very close with him.
I'm sorry about that. That was my mix-up because I didn't invite him to the group chat by mistake. Oh, I tried, I think, and I couldn't get him on it. So I'm sorry, guys. Just to let you know, Brent Swanson, that's who we're talking about. Hopefully, you can join if we're still on, and if not, then you can come to next week's podcast because the podcast will have to continue for Boston. So we'll continue to talk about him, of course. Beau, I wanted to, just before we go to the next person, I just wanted to comment on the integrity aspect that you talked about. Guys, I swear to God, I know you guys know I like to talk well of my friends, but I swear to God, this guy's integrity was unbelievable. Nothing could move it. You know why? Like, I knew Boston before I started on YouTube, like by 2 years. I used to text him on an email, just like you guys say, he responds to everybody. Sweetest guy on earth. You don't need anything from him, he'll still respond to you, late at night usually. And so I became sort of friends with him, somewhat quasi-friends, like we knew each other online, and he liked me. When I started my channel, at the time I had Amin Ali on my channel. And I didn't know that as much about Amin Ali. I didn't know as much about his background. I invited Boston to come on the channel with Amin Ali so that he could help Amin Ali's channel grow. And he said, absolutely not. I was like, bro, what are you talking about? I was like, we're friends. He's like, I'll come on the channel if you're there, but not on his channel. I said, why? So I'm not going to get into Amin. That's not the issue. The issue is that's how, like, he was like that. So then, for example, when Trigili had asked to come on my channel and do a series, he joined my channel for a while. He was trying to fix his reputation online and so on. When Trigili came on my channel, Boston stopped coming. So what happened was basically, at first I was with Amin, then I opened my own channel. When I opened my own channel, Boston's my first guest. First person willing to come on my podcast. Guys, check this out. If you search Bostin Loyd online, you'll see he goes to only the smallest channels to go to the podcast. Big channels invite him, he ignores it. He says that they don't really need it. But a small channel, he goes to help them out.
Yeah.
And he did that to me so many times until listen to this, until Nick Trigili came on my channel. They said, I'm sorry, Leo, I can't come anymore. I said, what do you mean? I thought he has a personal issue. I didn't understand this. Like, I didn't understand his integrity level. It is that high. He cannot associate with what he calls a phony or something like that. You know what I mean? And to the degree,
really, hand in hand with the fact that he can insult people to the quick. He can insult people like that because he's so honest. That's honesty's bastard's cousin.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's such a good point. You know, you could have been a comedian, Dave.
Sure,
you're very quick on your feet.
A truly honest person, you got to take that along with it.
That's a good point. He was only able to comment the way he did because he lived that life. And you know, personally also, let me tell you guys, this guy was not, I mean, tell you a personal issue. The last year I've been struggling a little bit with some issues because I live my life sort of not for financial reasons, not commercially. For the last 5 years or more, I've been trying to live a spiritual life and live for myself and not for society. You know what I mean? And Boston had the exact same mentality on his own, without even going through all the meditation, all that crap that I tried to do to get to that point. Boston was already there. He only cared about money as it related to Ariella and Jackson, as he could support his family. He would get offers, just like Beau said, all the time. and refused him immediately if he sensed any kind of lack of integrity. So that's just my piece there. But Blue
It's a
or
good
Pete?
foundation.
Yeah, I'm glad to speak. It's oh boy, me and Boston, you know, we clicked from the get-go. Like I've never met anybody as honest as him, as loyal, the integrity, like you've all spoken. It's just insane. I mean, we clicked from the get-go. Like oh my God. I've never met anybody like that. I was raised differently, had a very hard upbringing. And that was one of the things that I like highly value is being real, being honest, no matter what, even if you piss somebody off because you want to share your truth. And people might disagree with some of Boston's truth, but you know what? That was always his truth. That was always his heart. There was never any wavering, like all of you guys have said. There's never any wavering. It was just complete honesty. He challenged me in many ways. You know, he never would hesitate to say, "Hey, man, you know, like, you know, why are you doing it like this, or why are you doing this?" Like I respected that, you know, because not many people do that. It's someone who truly cares for you, and a true friend will challenge you, will bring up things that they disagree with, you know, because they care about you.
True.
And I've known so many people in this industry over the years. There's nobody like him. There will never be anyone like him again, you know, and that's just on, you know, that level. You know, what people saw, you know, was just that outer layer of Boston, you know, the shocking stuff. But the deeper stuff, you know, all of us got to see him grow into, you know, a mature man, a family man. That Boston had so many special things about him that I truly believe that God put in him that not many people have. It's an amazing thing, and it hurts every time I think about it. It makes me sick because that's such a beautiful thing about somebody, and it's not here anymore. People aren't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, he inspired all of us to look at ourselves and try to be more loyal and be more honest. And those are the two qualities that stand out the most, I think. Like, when I look at how he was with everybody, he was so honest. And I even like confided in him things that nobody knows about me because I trusted him. And I didn't know him that long. You know, I knew him pretty much the last year. First time I met him was on the podcast. And I'd like known about him because we were about the same age. We kind of came up around the same time. But he was the pioneer. He was the first guy who was really the open, true honesty within the industry. He was the first guy who kind of, you know, broke down those walls and said what nobody was saying. And everybody was too scared to. He was courageous for that. It was at a time when everyone thought you would, you know, get in trouble for that sort of thing, for talking about your dosages or what you're doing or showing everything that was behind the curtain. So for him to have the courage to be the first person to do that, that says a lot about him. And from that point on, his honesty, that's what everybody saw. And it honestly made me, it made me want to be better myself. Like, you know, seeing that through his character and how he was a family man, because if he wasn't at the gym, he was with his wife and kid at home. Like, that's what he did. He was all about that. If he wasn't around them, he was at the gym. That was it. Mm-hmm. And just seeing the number of friends he has and the number of people who he touched, that's a special person. So it's hard to think we're at this point now, because I know most of us probably were all texting him, you know, the day before. And we texted almost every day, and deep stuff. It wasn't just about supplements. It wasn't just about, you know, we texted about everything. It'd be religion. It could be anything. And even if he didn't necessarily agree with you on a certain subject, he was willing to listen. So that was another thing that stood out. Like, he didn't have to agree with you, but he was always going to be respectful and listen to what you had to say and your point of view. And, you know, even in just this last year that I've known him, He definitely left a huge impression on me. He's what loyalty is all about. He wouldn't. I mean, he turned on Dave because Dave tried to turn on Leo, and he was loyal to Leo. And that's just another example. And there's so many examples like that. Like, he was loyal to his friends. He was honest. He wasn't gonna. You knew you could trust him. And there's not too many people like that nowadays, especially in this industry. So I don't know. It's just.
Sorry, guys. I'm just inviting Brent.
You know, he was almost like generous to where it made you kind of uncomfortable. Like, I didn't want to take advantage of his generosity back when he had the peptide company.
Yeah.
And with the his SEO, you know, he told me, look, don't go to the website and order, just text me your order, and, you know, just take care of it through me, so, you know, give you the discount, and then he would forward it to the webmaster. So I would do that. He'd give me a discount, but then I'd get the pack and it'd be like all this extra shit, and I'm like, this is like way too much, you know. It's like, it got to the point where after a couple of times, you kind of feel like you're taking advantage, because it's just, I understand wanting to be nice to your friend, but it's just like a lot, you know. And, you know, he's got a son and a kid. I mean, a wife and kid. So it got, like, after a few times of that, I actually started placing the order in my wife's name and just putting it on the website, so the webmaster wouldn't see Beau Basden and just send it through that way. And I never even told Bostin, because I was like, you know, he got responsibilities too. So, you know, I want to pay full price. But he was just like that in every way, man. He would out in any way he could.
On that topic,
If I may interject real quick, one of the last things Bostin did with his life was possibly to save mine. I was talking to him a couple of days before he passed, and I was telling him about my plight with my blood pressure, which has been really horrendous lately.
Well,
it'll be fine. It'll be like 130/80 for most of the, and then I'll just wake up feeling like shit, and it'll be 210/120 for no reason, right? So I discussed this with him, and he told me about a supplement that I could take, and I was like, okay, a natural supplement. He goes, Dave, trust me. I gave it to my dad, and he got off his medications. Meanwhile, I'm on 3 medications for my blood pressure, and it still does that. So he recommended this stuff called Cartitone to me, and I ordered 2 bottles. I started taking it. I'll be damned. I'm 120/60 every day, and I haven't even been able to tell him that he helped me, and I might even be able to get off a medication or 2.
Dave, the same thing happened.
We always used to bounce stuff off of each other like that.
Dave, he was doing the same thing. Imagine this. Look at this angel. 2 days before he died, he was helping you. 2 days before he died, he was helping me with my family issues. He was telling Ariella to help also. They were both helping. And his racism was coming out in it. He's just telling Ariella secretly, he's like, I think that's Leo's Middle Eastern issues. This is the problem. Middle Eastern issues are causing family issues for him. He was always he would make fun of me, you know. He also, you know what's funny about Bostin? Someone mentioned this earlier. He would always, even though he was naturally trusting and he was genuinely curious. That was one of the most beautiful things about his personality. He was so curious about, you know, to learn.
I would like.
But one thing about him though, if he'd ask you a question, sometimes he'd doubt you. Like you'd tell him how, he'd ask you like, how much did you use this week? And you tell him and he'd be like, you sure? And tell me the truth. How much did you use? And you wouldn't believe it fully. He did this to me, not about drugs. He did this to me about, he thought my mother was Arab the whole time. He's like, come on, man, your mother's not white. I was like, she is. I swear. He doesn't believe me. Only believed me like a week or 2 ago. He's so funny. Tony, I noticed you wanted to talk earlier. We interrupted you. I'm sorry about that, brother. Tony's awake at 2 a.m., by the way, in Thailand, or it's more than 2 now. He woke up just for us, and he did it 2 days in a row, actually. Yesterday.
Let the man speak. Let the man speak.
I've got a good example that represents some of the stuff you guys said, and it was but the background first. I first found out about Bostin because of his crazy steroid transformation, right? That just absolutely epic to publish something like that and track something like that. And then, but what really got me excited was when he was showing inside his fridge, like, here's actually what I take, and like that openness. Back in the time when it was, you know, YouTube wasn't so censored. he was the one that opened the door. And then I became a YouTube influencer later, and he paved that path for me because I also started doing that same type of content, which is showing the injections on camera and the real-time diaries of the experiments I was doing on my body. So for me, like my path to grow was to get in touch with Bostin and really follow in his footsteps of doing this transparent experimentation stuff. That's what I wanted to do. So I was still practicing law at the time. I wasn't full-time on YouTube, but I wanted to transition to do YouTube stuff. So I thought a fastest way to do that would be to contact Bostin and offer him a lot of money so he couldn't possibly say no. And at the time I thought, okay, Bostin probably has a lot of opportunities. So I need to say something to really catch his attention. So I started communicating with him, and he was responsive, which again, like amazing, like you guys said, like he actually responds to people and fans like that. And I offered him $5,000 and that I would fly to Florida and I would spend just a couple hours with him, but I would rent us Lamborghinis, have them delivered to his house where we would take the Lamborghinis and we would drive to the gym together. I'd give him $5,000 and we just connect and make videos. And he said, no. I couldn't believe he said no. I mean, I really planned this whole offer to be like, how could anybody say no to the offer I made him? And then later, finally, I was able to connect with him. The way I ended up connecting with him and getting to know him and befriending him was through Coach Trevor, because Coach Trevor had somehow like went to school with him or something. So they had some sort of prior relationship or trust or something amongst them. So it was Coach Trevor that reached out, and then Bostin really obviously liked what, by that time later, Bostin had been watching my content. And so when we reached back out to him, we got a warm reception because it wasn't the money that got his attention, but it was like the fact that I was experimenting with the extreme chemistry that he was really excited about. So then we flew out there, and Coach Trevor and I spent a week with him in Florida, and injecting all kinds of stuff and trying kinds of stuff and going to the gym and doing all this stuff. And wow, Bostin really was reckless. Like I had to see it in person to believe it. Like it is really shocking. The most shocking, he would use the same insulin needle over and over, and he would shoot it through his clothing. Like no, not even no alcohol. Just
wait,
like
what?
Clothing.
Wait, what?
Through his clothes, he'd do it.
He'd shoot the insulin syringe through his clothing?
Yeah.
In the parking lot, right outside the gym where everybody can see.
That's
and
crazy.
I was like, oh wow. I'm like, how am I going to one up this? Like I'm trying to be the most extreme in the industry, and here Boston's injecting himself through his clothing with an old dirty needle. Oh, I'm like, man, how am I going to outdo this? So later that trip, we go out to dinner, Ariella, my baby mama, Bostin, and I pull out the syringe, and I go, all right, right here. And I'd say, we're going to inject our insulin and growth hormone at the dinner table here. And we do it. And then the manager comes over later and says, yeah, we had some complaints about injecting things. And I actually made Bostin nervous. He's like, Bostin was actually really nervous about it. Like we were getting too much attention. And I was like, yes, I did it.
My question to you, Tony, is why did you feel that you had to outdo that?
Oh, well, that's the dangerous thing.
Right?
Like, we were like kids, he's like a kid, and he's,
like, what can I do to top that? Right.
Basically, if we spent more time together, we'd probably both be dead, a lot earlier. So both pushed each other in bad direction.
Yeah, that's very true. I think everyone's commented a bit. So unless someone want to add some more stuff, I have a couple of things I wanted to mention that we didn't, I think, mention. One is a funny story with me and Bostin. About a year ago, no, it couldn't have been a year ago. So when Nick Trigili stopped coming on my channel, Bostin had refused to come the whole time. Okay, so he's still texting me, he's still my friend, but he's like, I will not come on your channel. This is not possible. So when Trigili left, I was like, bro, will you come on my channel, because I don't have regular guests. So he's like, okay, I'll come. He didn't really want to do the podcast. He was doing it for me. The first few weeks he was doing it for me. And he's like, I could do one every 2-3 weeks, something like that. But later he liked talking to me, and he loved the people who would message him after. He would love to talk to them and stuff, so he'd really like to come. But anyway, along the way, so when he started coming and we started the podcast, by the way, the reason we called it the non-fraudulent bodybuilding podcast was a Boston joke. It was one of Boston's many jokes. He used to call Fuad fraud. So he called the channel non-fraudulent to be the opposite, like, you know, just, it was a joke, meaning, you know, he didn't mean it in a bad way. But when he started coming on my channel, I don't know if it was, or maybe it was right before he came on my channel, Trigili actually, and another YouTuber who I won't say his name, came to me privately because they know I hate rats. I really don't like snitches and shit like that. So they came to me privately and they're like, listen, Bostin snitched. And they have this elaborate story. It's a very specific story. I spent, you guys would not, you know, I'm a weird guy. I spent like 3 hours trying to get to the bottom of this with Bostin. I called Bostin, called them, called back Bostin, called them again. I was trying to figure out if Bostin really did snitch. Because if he snitched, I wouldn't be able to be friends with him. And it turned out whatever he did, he didn't do it intentionally. He really did not realize that it affected anyone or whatever. When I confirmed that is only after that point, I kept having Bostin on the channel. Bostin knows that. And he liked it. It was pretty funny. And he stayed on the phone with me for hours, like convincing me in detail, like exactly what happened, telling me how everything happened. That's one thing I want to talk about. Like, it's a funny story. Another one is that you guys mentioned this already, but he spent his entire day with Ariella and Jackson in the day. He was so protective over this that for the first like 6 months or more of my podcast, I had to record at 9 or more or later PST. But he's in EST. So this guy's recording at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. I'm like, why are you doing this? Because I think it's ruining the podcast because I'm a daytime person. So at night, I'm like, I can't talk much. So I'd be like, once a week, every week, my schedule would completely flip. I'd have to like drink coffee at night to go talk to him. And the only reason he used to do this is because he wanted his whole day to be spent with Jackson and Ariella. Later, I asked Ariella once, because I was having such difficulty with the schedule. I was like, why is Bostin so adamant about this? She said, that's the way Bostin shows his love. It's one of the ways he shows his love. Like to him, being there always for us was a way to show his love. And this is before he passed, by the way. So this is the kind of person he was. Another thing I wanted to mention about him is his loyalty. Pete mentioned his loyalty to me. Honestly, Bostin's loyalty wasn't really to me at that time. That was Bostin standing up for his integrity. He felt like a big channel was trying to hurt a small channel, and he felt that there was no legitimate reason for it. So he stood by that. He didn't pick sides. He just said, I can't stop going on Leo's channel because of this reason. It doesn't make sense to me. What happened is the other person said, then you're not welcome on my channel. So he didn't betray anyone. He was just standing up for his integrity. So that's what happened there. But he was also a loyal guy. He was very loyal to me, but he would not be loyal to you if he thought that you were doing something unethical. If he thought that you were doing something unethical, he would direct it to you. He would bring it up to you directly. And as long as he always believed you were ethical, he'd be loyal always. And so the loyalty, the daytime with the family. And the other thing is the cheating and the honesty. Let's talk about those two things. So one, Bostin never cheated on Ariella. I know how much that means. I've been with my wife, Lucy, for 4 years almost. I have never responded to a single message from a girl. I have never texted a girl looking for something. I have never I don't even look at girls. And I've never cheated, obviously. And to me, this... I've done it myself, and I know other people here on the podcast have surely done it before. It takes a lot for a guy to do that for many years. It means that you're a truly loyal person, especially someone like Bostin, who was quite famous. I mean, he could get probably a lot of girls if he wanted to. He could be like a lot of other people, cheating, hiding. He never did that ever. He was always honest with Ariella. She was in fact telling me this after his passing, that he was always honest and never, he never cheated. And this means a lot also. And then finally, about the honesty thing, you guys, many of you mentioned that he didn't know how to lie. I agree. And I never commented on this fully on the podcast because I didn't want to like psychoanalyze him or something. But I figure that Bostin has a very unique brain. The way his brain developed was very unique. He literally didn't really understand why people lied. And he couldn't really get himself to do it. It wasn't just a mental principle. It was a physical thing about his brain. You guys agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's what I have to say about
Bostin.
The
cheating thing was a huge deal. He was just like, I don't understand why does someone with somebody if they want to cheat? And I was like, Bostin, men are men, like we're we do a lot of bad things, I mean, but of course, when you get married, that's a different story. You want to grow out of that, all that. But he just never understood. Like, I just don't understand.
Yeah,
that's how loyal he was.
Especially on marriage, right? He believed in marriage.
I wouldn't know if he was cheating on her. Back when they were having their problems, I was very, very tight with him at that point. We were texting every day. If he had cheated on her, I would have known about it. He didn't. He wouldn't. He couldn't.
He didn't want to do it. He didn't even understand why other people would do it.
Couldn't understand it.
It was such
harassment.
Exactly.
Like, why do people do that? If you're committed, why would you do that?
Yeah.
He just didn't get it.
Yeah, Boston and I were complete opposites in that area.
He invented the word Europhic.
Yeah, Europhic. Hey, we should make some merchandise with Europhic for the family, for Ariella and Jackson.
Europhic, yeah.
We should do that. We should do that. Because I always told him, hey, that's another example. I always told Boston, sell the Europhic hats.
Absolutely.
Ariella made him one. He wouldn't. He was like, but why? He doesn't want to make money. He's not like.
He didn't get how people would want those.
And no, so he didn't get, because like for the people listening who aren't YouTubers, who aren't bodybuilders or whatever, you'd be surprised how many bodybuilders, or not so much bodybuilders, but YouTubers, their main goal is money. Like, they come to you, they talk about health or whatever their literally main goal is to make money from you. They just weren't good enough to be bankers or whatever, right? Boston was so unusual in that sense. Like, I barely know anyone on YouTube who cares so little about money. He was making in fact,
all about the content.
If you guys remember, his channel had a ton of followers. It had like 500,000. It got closed. He never even reopened one.
And he would go on podcasts with people who had like 500 views.
Yes.
He didn't care that people have a big following. If he clicked with the person and he liked, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll come on and talk to you.
Yeah,
he didn't.
Exactly. It was a wonderful person. Well, brothers, I hope that Brent would be able to join us, but I think what we'll do is we'll just record next week as we used to with Boston on Wednesday. If any of you would like to join, you're all welcome. You're all welcome. You guys are.
What time next week?
For the podcast to keep going.
Yeah. What time?
He loved it.
Yeah, Boston. Both. I was interrupting you. What did you say? Sorry, sir.
Boston would definitely prefer for the podcast to keep going. He really doing it. When you took that break in December, he completely, you needed your personal time, but he missed it.
I know he missed it. I left him alone. This was but do you guys think we should rename the podcast the Bostin Loyd podcast, or should it be the the NFBP? I don't know. I'm gonna ask Ariella also. Like, I want to keep his name so alive that it's like very.
Bear his name going forward.
Huh?
It should bear his name going forward.
Yeah, bear his name somehow. Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. I agree. So, just for you guys to know, the funeral. I don't know what a wake is, by the way. I'm not Christian, so what is a wake?
I think it's where they like meet with the family the day before.
Okay.
It's just a night before, kind of like a gathering. If you can't, sometimes people can't make the funeral, they go to the wake.
Okay.
The night before, unfortunately, I won't be at the funeral. I have.
I know.
On probation.
Armon literally can't.
I'm on probation and bond. So unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to get cleared.
No, there's no way you could have gotten cleared in time. Armon really wanted to be there. So just for you guys to know, the wake, I'm going to try to release this video today, just so people know. The wake is tomorrow in Florida. The information is online. Maybe I can make another post about it today. The funeral is, so that's Friday, and then the funeral is Saturday, to my knowledge. I was adamant about being there, but because of my family issues, I physically cannot leave right now because of some emergency issues. So I will be visiting Ariella separately with one of Boston's clients, Saul, who we've mentioned on the channel before, maybe in a week or two, and we'll go personally to check on her and see her. I'm talking to her every day. If you guys who are listening to the podcast can give her some support. Ariella truly loved Boston, truly loved him. She's the kind of woman that all of us would have wanted to have, that if we passed, she would maintain his name. And she is so loyal, and she's going through so much stuff. So really, Ariella and Jackson needs to know the legend of his father. His father needs to live on. You know, I was gonna make a video about grief. Actually, I was being asked to make a video about grief like 2 weeks before Boston passed. I'll make a video one day. Not that I know much about it, but the one thing that I've always done with people who have died around me, because I have one of my best friends was killed by one of my other friends a few years ago, and this guy Anus that died, I sometimes even swear on his name. I say on Anus. That's how much I maintain his name remembered. I believe that if somebody dies, I don't believe that we're all really beings completely. I think that we're all parts of beings all put together, and parts of us are our thoughts, parts of us are our actions. And if you live a really truly noble life or a meaningful life that has impact on a lot of people, your actions echo in the halls of eternity. They keep going. So Boston keeps living if we keep him alive. He's not dead. His physical being is dead. You know, that's what I would wish if someone would do if I died. It would be to keep the name alive, because not the name, the meaning, and live by those principles. So I will try going forward in the podcast to be as honest and have as much humility as I can. It will never match Boston's, but I will really try to do that, and we'll try to keep his name living here. And we should keep his name living also in our own private lives for those of you that really loved him a lot, like I am. You guys agree? Any last words?
Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, man.
Dave, I'm sorry I didn't even invite you earlier. He loved you. He loved all of you guys specifically. Every one of you, he messaged me about you guys and said very, very, very kind things about you. That's why I picked these names. Brent Swanson, he didn't used to talk to me as much about him, but I used to hear his name, but I didn't know who he was. So that's why I made the mistake not scheduling that. That's my fault. But just for the audience to know, these people are the people that Boston loved. And I want to comment on something Bleu did also before we finish. Bleu donated not only massively to the fund for Ariella, but also Boston's clients that signed up with Bleu, he had them sign up through their donation on to Ariella. So these are the kind of actions that real friends do in the absence of their friends, and they don't talk about it. If you notice, Bleu didn't even mention it in the podcast. So, you know, this is what Boston deserves. Maybe I'll do another video later to discuss why I think he died specifically. I do think it was avoidable. I think I played some small role not being available during the COVID illness. Some maybe small role because he didn't used to listen to everything I said. If you guys remember the bacterial infection, it lasted a long time. I tried to get him to the ICU. Saul, poor guy, he has a medical facility in California. We offered to fly Boston in secretly so he doesn't have to go to an emergency room to treat it, but he wouldn't listen. The longer those infections go on, the more damage goes to those little cells everywhere in the body. And if you had just some genetic weakness slightly, and then so the bacterial infection lasts a long time. Then he had the COVID for a long time. And guys, I don't know. I've never told this story properly on the channel, but the reason why I started lifting weights last year. You guys remember I started lifting weights for like 2 months. I got a bit bigger, and then I stopped 4 months in. The reason why, I had gotten COVID while my wife was pregnant. I didn't notice anything. When I started lifting weights, I noticed my heart rate was going really weird. Something was off. I've never experienced this in my life. I was lifting weights, out of breath, have to sit down. So that was something was going on, structural changes to my heart because of the damage to the virus. I felt that, and I was like, you know what? I shouldn't even exercise at all. I should just, take a beta blocker and sit at home. So that's what I've been doing the last few months because of that reason. This could have happened to any of us. There isn't something that Boston, it could have, he could have treated the bacterial infection quicker. Maybe he could have tried to treat COVID quicker. He could have done these different therapies, but you can't protect yourself from these small damages that can happen suddenly when you go to the gym and lift very hard. It could happen to anyone.
But Leo, I would like to add one thing. The week before it happened, he was going to go in for his last 2 tests with the cardiologist.
Yeah.
That is the last evaluation. They canceled on him. So even if, like the heart they canceled his appointment. So if he would have went to that appointment and there was something going on with his heart, it would have been found immediately because it's a thorough, they do everything.
That's such a good point, Beau, because what happened was he had done the initial scans, but he was going for the echocardiogram. No, he was going for the CT scan, I think, like the big one.
Yeah, what they're doing for is a basic, the last 2 tests are that determines your final decision, and they go through everything. I do forget the name of the two exams they give you, but it's a complete scan. So whatever was going on, they would have found that, and they canceled the appointment.
That's true. That's another example of how much Boston was following through with his health. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, wait. Can I have one more thing? I'm sorry. I have seen a lot of people online saying he wasn't following protocol. He was going against doctor's orders. No, he was in a transplant evaluation. He went to every appointment. They do your blood work every time you go there. He wasn't being, okay, maybe he was doing some things he talked about on the podcast on his own, but he was not, he was in compliance.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dave, sorry, I interrupted you, Dave.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, well, that he was, not only in compliance, he was managing his blood pressure very carefully with doctor supervision. The only thing that he could have there are two things he could have done that he didn't do. One was to just get very skinny and stop lifting. If he got very skinny and stopped lifting, this probably wouldn't have happened because he wouldn't have been lifting that day. So there wouldn't have been so much pressure on the cardiovascular system so that the abdominal aneurysm happened, which is what I think happened, not the aortic originally. And then that caused either the aortic or thoracic. But the only other thing he could have done is go on dialysis, which he didn't do. But I don't know how much impact that really had in those few months.
He could get by without it. He could have started it if he chose to. But he also could have waited. I mean, he wasn't at the point where it was life or death. He needed to go on.
Exactly. Yeah. People have to understand he was not like playing Russian roulette. Actually, let me say it for Ariella. She'll be on the channel to say it herself. But last night, Ariella specifically told me, because I was telling her, like, my thing is, I always had an excuse for why Bostin didn't lose all the weight. It was because he has like an OCD mentality. Like someone mentioned earlier about we all have different addictions. His addiction was partially going to the gym. Like he loved to work out, actually. He loved to go to the gym in the morning. It was that's why he used to text us in the morning, because he was in a great mood. He loved to go to the gym. So I felt like he couldn't do some of the things, but everything that he could do, I felt like he tried to do. And people should know that he wasn't like Ariella yesterday told me, Bostin, she told me that the night before she asked Bostin, she said, is everything okay? Are you sure nothing can happen to you? And Bostin said, yeah, everything's okay, babe. My heart is fine. They checked it. So he was really being really careful. He was still taking all his supplements as astragalus or whatever, all these kind of things. He was trying to eat less. He wasn't taking much gear, by the way, for people to know. He spent over 4 months on like 150 milligrams of testosterone, 200 or 250. And then recently he just added a little bit of other things, but I don't think they contributed to his death at all. He was just getting tired because he was like, I'm not getting better from not taking anything. I'm not going to take a lot. You know what I mean? But I just want people to know he was not being reckless.
Shots. If he didn't feel good that day, he would skip them for a few days. And then if he had a good day where he had a little more energy, he would take them. So he wasn't taking a lot of stuff.
Not at all. Not at all.
Leah,
all right, bro.
Leah, what triggered him to start looking into his heart and start getting heart testing in the first place?
It's been a year of personal transformation for Bostin, or more than a year of him slowly learning about health, being interested in learning about his health. For example, like he was just asking us to do some blood work for him to see how his kidney changed after COVID. We were just looking into it because I was telling him maybe there's some damage from COVID to your kidney. We have to see how the markers change in detail, not just the EGFR and creatinine, but in the cystatin C and the other things. So he was constantly looking into. He wanted to live for Ariella and Jackson. And let me tell you another thing, guys. I just want to be clear. When Bostin first got kidney failure, just to be clear, this is a huge psychological thing. Like when he got kidney failure. Imagine as Bostin Loyd getting kidney failure. Like knowing that everyone would say, I told you so, you idiot, you killed yourself. You know, he knew that. He didn't ever say it directly to me, but he felt that. And that's why I called him. I was calling him a lot when he first found out about the kidney failure. And I was telling him, listen, brother, it's not the end of who you are. It's a change. Now you can show people what those things did, and you can help people prevent themselves from being in the same situation. And that was genuinely his initial agreement to come on this podcast. You know, so
I was about to say that, people always saw him on the podcast. So, at 29 years old, 28, 29, going through something like this is, he projected like, oh, everything's fine, I'm happy. But what you're going through, you're in kidney failure, you're 29 years old. People understand, like, he was going through a lot that he kept in. He didn't come on the show and be like, oh, poor me, this and this, so people don't realize, like, they would see him laugh, smile all the time, what he was dealing with at 29 years old, having to deal with kidney failure. I hooked him up with my doctor friend that had COVID, and he went into kidney failure, and he was at home dialysis because I was like, start dialysis soon. I don't know much about it. I was like, so he spoke to my doctor for about 2 hours, one doctor friend. He's like, thank you for letting me talk to him. But just what the psychological part of it, people don't understand when you're going through that type of health issues unless you've been through it. Like they just saw him smiling, laughing, like, oh, what a great, and that's how he wanted to project it. Like, oh, poor me, so, it's just, he was going through a lot.
But he did warn people. He would warn people, but he would not show his pain on the podcast.
Right.
And I'm sure there was, I know there was, because I talked to him a lot privately. There was fear and there was concern and there was worrying about his family if he dies early. And he was.
About a month ago, Boston asked me, are you afraid of dying? And we had a discussion. And of course, his family was the only reason. He said, when I was younger, if you asked me that, it would just be bodybuilding, well, I'm going to bodybuild until I can't do it. But he said, no, I have to be here. I have to be here for them.
Wow. What a glorious man. What a man of gravitas and impact and noble spirit. He's a true noble spirit. You know what I was thinking the other day? Good people, they come from like a couple of scenarios. Some learn lessons in life and decide to enact an ethical code. Some people are religious. Religion usually cures the soul, honestly, and makes good people. But then there are other people, I call them noble spirits. They're just born with good ethics and they just have a noble spirit. And I think Boston was one of the best examples of a noble spirit. All right, brothers. I'll let you guys be for now. I'll try to get this podcast out soon. There might not be much editing, but it's been too long, and I want people to hear it before the funeral and the wake. Dave, you're muted. You muted yourself. Let me try to unmute you. Dave, you're muted. I asked to unmute you. There you go.
Let me try it again. How about that?
Yeah, that works.
How about now?
Yeah. But you're frozen now.
How about now?
No, we hear you. We hear you fine, but he's like changing stuff. We hear you. We hear you. You don't hear us?
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I do.
Yeah, I hear you. What were you saying?
I just wanted to say it was good sitting down with all you guys and reminiscing about Boston. It's good for my soul to do this, to be honest with you. And thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
It's my honor. And I hope you guys will continue to come on the podcast, including you, Dave, even if it's not so regular, but I really... Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I'll contact you all soon. Long live Bostin Loyd.